Three students studying at the theology seminary in Kiev, philosopher Homa Brute, theologian Halyava, and rhetorician Tiberi Gorobets, set out on the roads to return to their villages for the summer holiday. In the late afternoon, they look for a place to stay in a village. They take shelter in the house of an old, grumpy woman. At midnight, the woman jumps on Homa's back and begins flying him around like a witch, whipping him. Homa, terrified, "Lord, help me." Homa recites prayers, causes the woman to fall to the ground, and beats her to death with a stick. The dead woman suddenly turns into a young and very beautiful girl. Homa flees to Kiev in terror. A short time later, he is summoned by a wealthy Cossack bey. The bey's daughter is on her deathbed, and in her last breath had said, weakly, "Bring the philosopher Homa Brute. Let him read prayers over my corpse in the church for 3 nights." Homa goes to the village reluctantly. First night. He is alone in the church. The girl's coffin is in the center. At midnight, the coffin lid opens. The dead girl rises. Her eyes are closed. She stretches out her arms, searching for Homa. Trembling with fear, Homa draws a circle on the floor, recites prayers. The girl cannot step into the circle, only hurls threats, flies around in the air. Homa survives until morning. Second night. The girl utters magical words. The creatures on the ceiling awaken. The church fills with demonic noises. But Homa again endures inside his circle with his prayers. And when the rooster crows, everything disappears. Third night. The girl has gone mad with rage, screaming, "Bring Vi!" The doors burst open with a crash. A terrifying creature with an iron face, iron eyelids, and a gigantic body rises from the ground and enters. Vi. "Lift my eyelids," he commands. Servant creatures lift his eyelids. Vi's gaze pierces through everything. Homa must not look, but in fear, he opens his eyes and meets Vi's gaze. At that moment, his soul is pulled out. He turns into a gray corpse and collapses to the floor. In the morning, those who come to the church find Homa lifeless. From that day on, that church is cursed. No one enters it. It is filled with demonic creatures. Homa's soul remains a prisoner of Vi forever. This story, inspired by the underground spirit that kills with its eyes, Vi, from Slavic mythology, is Gogol's darkest and most impressive work. The fog had swallowed everything in the narrow, muddy streets of Kiev. The 3 poor students of the theology seminary, philosopher Homa Brute, theologian Halyava, and rhetorician Tiberi Gorobets, had been on the road for days to spend their summer holiday. Their feet were swollen, their cassocks torn, their stomachs cramped from hunger. There wasn't a single light on the horizon. When night fell, they saw a crooked hut by the roadside. At the door stood a hunchbacked old woman with her back turned. The woman's voice was cold as the wind. "Come in, seminary rats. You'll freeze in the cold." The inside smelled disgusting. Mold, burnt grass, rotting meat. The woman gave them stale bread and a bowl of sour milk. Homa curled up in a corner and tried to sleep. In deep sleep he felt a weight. When he half opened his eyes, the old woman was on top of him. But she was no longer old. Her eyes were blood red, her teeth sharp, her hair writhing like snakes. With one leap, the woman jumped onto Homa's back, wrapped her legs around his waist and shouted, "Giddy-ap!" The roof burst open with a crash, and the two of them shot up into the night sky. The wind tore at his ears. The woman whipped him with her legs, flew him among the clouds, made him circle over the fields in the moonlight. Homa went mad with fear, but the prayers he had learned from the Bible came to mind. Gathering all his strength, he began reciting them aloud. The woman screamed. They tumbled in the sky and crashed hard to the ground. Homa grabbed a huge log and started beating the woman. The woman begged, cursed, uttered damnations. With the final blow, she lay lifeless. When Homa looked, panting, the one lying on the ground was no longer the old woman. There was a young girl with snow-white skin, long black hair, and a beauty that enchanted. Her eyes open, dead. Homa screamed and plunged into the forest. He ran for days. Thorns tore his face. He fainted from hunger, woke up, ran again. Finally, he reached Kiev and threw himself into the seminary courtyard. He was shaking. His hair had turned white overnight. A week later, riders came from the village. They were the men of the rich Cossack captain. "Where is the philosopher Homa Brute?" they shouted. They seized Homa, threw him across a horse, blindfolded him, and traveled for days. When they arrived at a wealthy Cossack village, everyone was dressed in black. The captain's daughter, that beautiful girl, was on her deathbed. In her last breath, the girl had whispered, "Find the seminary student who killed me. His name is Homa Brute. For 3 nights let him read prayers over my corpse in the ruined church. If he does not come, let our village be cursed. Let children die before they are born." They locked Homa in an old, abandoned church. The church had been closed for years. The doors were rusted, the icons broken. There were demonic scratches on the walls, thousands of bats on the ceiling. In the middle was the girl's open coffin, surrounded by flickering candles. The doors were chained, the key left outside. Homa was alone. First night. When the clock struck midnight, the coffin lid creaked open. The girl slowly sat up. Her eyes were closed, but it was as if she could see. She stretched out her arms and whispered, "Homa." The voice came from the grave, cold and sticky. Homa froze with fear, but quickly drew a circle on the floor with chalk, stepped inside, and began shouting the prayers. The girl approached the circle, extended her foot. An invisible wall flung her back. She howled with rage, began flying around the church, crashing into the ceiling, tearing out her hair. The candles went out one by one. In the darkness, only the girl's white nightgown glowed. The chase lasted all night. When the rooster crowed, the girl fell back into her coffin. The lid closed. The candles relit themselves. Second night. This time the girl spoke ancient Slavic incantations. The devil pictures on the church walls came to life, their eyes glowing red. Swarms of bats attacked Homa, their wings scratching his face. At one point, the girl pulled a wolf's head out of the coffin, became a howling wolf, then turned back into a girl. Homa's voice was hoarse, his throat bleeding, but he did not leave his circle. When morning came, everything fell silent. Bat corpses scattered on the floor. Third night. Homa was now unrecognizable, his eyes sunken, his hair completely white, his lips purple. The church doors opened by themselves. Outside, a storm was raging. The girl rose one last time, this time laughing. "Prayers won't be enough," she said. "I summon thee." The church shook, the ground cracked. A dark mist rose. From it emerged a giant creature with an iron face, iron fingers, iron eyelids. Thee. As he walked, the earth split. With every step, the church groaned. V stopped and commanded in a hoarse voice, "Open my eyes." Little demons ran and lifted his iron eyelids. These eyes opened, red, blazing. His gaze pierced through everything. Homa shouted to himself, "Don't look!" But he couldn't resist. He raised his head and met V's eyes. At that moment his heart stopped. His soul was torn from his body and dragged into the darkness. His hair instantly turned completely gray. He collapsed to the floor, cold as stone. In the morning, when the villagers broke down the doors and entered, they found Homa like that. The trace of that terrible gaze still on his face. His eyes open, his mouth twisted. From that day on, no one approached that church. Howling, the rattling of chains, and V's heavy iron footsteps could be heard from inside. The villagers nailed boards over the church, placed huge crosses on it. But it was useless. At night, a green light still seeps out, and the clanking of V's iron eyelids spreads with the wind throughout the whole village. They say that whoever takes one step into that church, V opens his eyes once more. And they never close again.